Is everything. Oh, and the mic's hot. Okay.
With a chance, with a chance, with a chance, with a chance. When the crowd gets fussy, when the floor gets dusty, when your blade gets rusty, with a chance, with a chance. When your room smells funny, when a hex takes your money. What's gonna save you, honey? Just with a chance, with a chance. All you witches and all you old magicians, it's time to start listening to with a chance, with a chance. With a chance. When the crowd gets fussy, when the floor gets dusty, when your blade gets rusty, with a chance, with a chance. When your room smells funny, when a hex takes your money, what's gonna save you, honey? Just with a chance, with a chance. All you witches and all you old magicians, it's time to start listening to with a chance, with a chance.
pensando los velorios. ¿Y qué le hacemos a Babalú? Dame 17 velas va a ponerlo en cruz. Y dame un cabo de tabaco, bañejeñe, y un jarrito de aguardiente. Y dame un poco de dinero, mañejeñe, pa' que me dé la suerte. Yep, a gozar, nena. En Santiago se baila la conga. Yo quiero pedir que mi negara me quiera, que tenga dinero y que no se muera. Yo le quiero pedir a Babalú una negara bendona como tú, que no tenga otro negro pa' que no se muera. Babalú, 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 ay, Babalú, ay.
Desi Arnaz on Widdershins Radio.
Widdershins.
Radio for your spiritual side. A twisted approach to the left-hand path and all the paths in between. As I was saying to Marta, I love that song. When I think about my childhood, all those stupid 50s white people singing along to a song about Apollo, God. Clueless. Clueless, singing along. Probably fucking in the car on the way home singing that shit. I think it's fucking funny. We heard Concrete Blonde, new to the list, and then our theme song by the Daryl Hellmore's orchestra. Oh, the chat room's happening. Hello, Alan, in the chat room. How are you? I tend to not say anything in the chat room because one time I did that and it crashed the whole fucking app. So I'll say hello that way.
We had to restart the
We had to restart it. It was one of those nightmare things, kind of like when somebody calls. So I have it set to do not disturb. Tonight, our very special guest coming to us all the way from Bourbon Street in the French Quarter, a mere stone's throw from here.
It's like a 9-minute drive.
Not even a 9-minute drive, really. Probably 3, 4. I think it's it's a 15-minute walk.
No, it's more
at your pace, it's like a 25-minute walk, sure, but it's a 9-minute walk for me. At any rate, coming to us all the way from the French Quarter here in New Orleans, and on the tail end of his fall touring schedule, where he's been all over the goddamn place, our good friend Hoodoo Sen Moise joins us tonight.
How's everybody doing?
Good.
I'm here. Yep, I'm here.
Good. Here in the studio. One of the few people that come, live to the studio. There's been, Patty Negri.
In L.A.
Christian Day. Mm-hmm. And that was with Moise that time. Mm-hmm. And Moise. We haven't had a whole lot of in-studio guests. We don't let people come to our house and shit.
Yeah, we're very
unless you're the
selective
special,
who we let through
special
these
kind of
doors.
people. And he's so special.
You could say that I'm touched.
I will say that. So, you're in the middle of your tour schedule for fall, and you got one more stop after this one.
No, I have two.
Two.
So next week, from the 26th through the 30th, I will be in Salem, Massachusetts, doing readings, teaching classes, and then I'm going to be doing a ceremony at the official Salem Witches Ball, which is going to be at the Hawthorne Hotel. If you haven't gotten your tickets for it, then you absolutely should. If you haven't gotten your tickets for my class yet, then you absolutely should. Mm-hmm. We're going to be talking about Conjure in the Graveyard. And, in that class, we're going to go over the different aspects of the graveyard, because the graveyard is a very volatile place. And there's a lot of things, that move around. And there's both, the good, the bad, and the ugly that that reside there. So we're going to go over a bunch of stuff with that, and then we're going to take a little field trip over to
Oh, you are?
yeah,
Oh,
to one of the graveyards in Salem. But I always got to be careful with that, because the popo up there be scary. It's so funny. The last time that I did a graveyard class up there, I think there were two, maybe like three of the Salem popos, and they were just watching me the whole time, because they thought that I was gonna go into their grave, which normally I would do, like in New Orleans. Like, I do that all the time. Like, I'm not afraid to jump no damn fence.
So the graveyard's locked there.
Yeah, they have these little, but I mean, I don't even know why they even bother, because the wall is like, I don't know, maybe 4.5 feet tall, maybe 5 feet. I mean, I think it's pointless, but they get all scary about that. So, but it's going to be a good time. We're going to be throwing down up there, and we're going to, learn some things, which is always a good thing. Stuff to add to, one's own, how you call it, repertoire of work, and, showing you a way that we in hoodoo or conjure, whichever term you choose to use, how we do it. So I expect to see y'all there. So don't disappoint me, because I know where you live.
One of these days, we're going to go there, too.
Well, right away, I want to ask about the difference between the names, because we have, Appalachian Conjure. We have some Appalachian Conjure that incorporates a lot of like Irish shit in it and Scottish shit. I mean, I think the first to settle Appalachia was the Scottish, at least for the Europeans. So what would you say is the difference between hoodoo and conjure? Really,
I mean, it's nothing more than terms.
Yeah.
When it comes to to conjure or hoodoo work, a lot of it varied from region to region, depending on what was dominant in that particular region, whether it was Catholicism or whether it was Christianity, and those terms would be considered like synonymous. Mm-hmm. It just depends on which one you want to use or whatever. Like when I was a kid, they really didn't even use those words at all. Like the word for hoodoo or conjure was just work.
Yeah.
There was the I got to go to work, talking about going to the regular job, and then I got work to do, which of course means something different. you know, it means that, you know, now it's time to get down, you know, with the spiritual stuff. You know, because I came from the very old school to where, you know, you had a job, you had a job like your normal, you know, 40-hour-a-week job, you know, wherever, and then after you got home with that, then, you know, you started your other job, which would be like, you know, readings, spiritual work, you know, doing, you know, baths, making fixed candles for folks, you know, all those sorts of things. So it was always very interesting. Hey. It was always a very interesting thing because, you know, like things never stopped, if you will. Like they just kept going. You know, it didn't matter like what you were doing, but you always had, you know, your hand in something. Because there was always people that needed something. There was always, you know, your job that you had to go to, and, you know, so it's always held with it, like, you know, at least in the old school, like a heavy burden in that regard, because, you know, it's almost like that there was not very much free time. But, you know, we did it. We did what needed to be done, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters. You know, spirits got served, ancestors got elevated and served, and then, you know, we wait for the next day to do it all over again.
Now be sure and check out Moise's book, Work and Conjure. Marta got a copy. So I read over her shoulder sometimes when she's reading it. Signed copy, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should have put Pickle's paw print on it.
Yeah. Yeah,
I know. You know, that's what should have happened, actually. Yes, indeed.
Well, you know, I can't speak clearly to it, but with regard to Appalachian conjure, there's a new race that archaeologists have uncovered that originated from Appalachia, and it's not Native American, it's not African American, it's not European American. I don't know what it's called. The data's still coming out, but they were dark skinned, but they weren't from any of the known places where fucking people came to this fucking country, and they the first place they went was Appalachia. And so it's interesting stuff I'm seeing come out there, but I can't think of the name of that race yet.
Well, there's always something, you know, interesting, you know, that's coming out of different places and such. Because I was raised in Appalachia, in the Blue Ridge Mountains, to be specific. And so, you know, it was always something. You know, the one thing that I do really miss about it is there was always something to explore, whether it was like a cave, you know, a section, you know, in the woods, you know, all those things, which, you know, one of my favorite things to do is explore. And so I used to do a lot of that when I was a kid. And, you know, it always provided for very good lessons in things, because I can tell you, you know, when you're out in the middle of all the trees and the roots and the herbs and everything, and you're out in the middle of that, like, everything has a spirit, you know, every root and such has a spirit to it, but they also have a voice. And so that's always been, you know, a very both humbling and edifying thing, is that, you know, you go and you just kind of like listen, and you listen, and the spirit of the root will always talk. But sometimes what happens is that we get caught up in our own heads, and we don't, you know, stop for a minute just to kind of like hear, you know, what's being said. And, you know, because of that, we miss a lot of like what the roots, the spirits of the roots, like what they do. You know, like you can go out all day and buy, you know, 75 different books about herbalism or whatever, and everybody has their own definition. But, like where I come from, basically it was building a relationship with the spirit of the root, that would reveal to you what was done. Which, of course, if we want to go down that route, we're going to go down that route.
Yeah.
And we talk about, the birth of this magic, the birth of conjure, which, has its primary root in the Congo of Africa and came, over here during the Middle Passage, during the transatlantic slave trades. And when, the slaves were plucked from their houses and their families and such and put on those boats, the ones that survived, that made it over here, had absolutely nothing but their spirits. That's it. They had, they didn't have like the trees and the roots and such that, that they had there. So there was nothing. And because of all of the murders and the tortures, the rapes, and every horrible thing that that happened, there was no choice, but something needed to be done. So the magic of conjure was birthed out of a need to change a condition. That condition was the oppression that was going on, to bring freedom, to trick the master, so to speak, and that's where this magic comes from. That's why, like, I get a lot of questions of the same question. I should say a whole lot, which is, like, people often ask me about, like, oh, well, should I do this conjure work under like the new moon, or the waxing Gibberlius, or whatever the hell they call it, moon, and all that other shit, and I'm like, it doesn't matter, because when you think about the birth of that work, or you think about the birth of that magic, you couldn't rely on what phase the moon was in, because if that work didn't get done, somebody's gonna die. And so it didn't matter what phase the moon was in or what day of the week it was. It was, again, born out of a necessity to overcome and to change a condition.
Well, I say the same thing with witchcraft. It's like, yeah, okay, we recognize all of those times, but when it's time to get shit done, you got to get shit done.
When there's the need.
It doesn't matter what phase the moon's in, what phases the planets are in. It's time to fucking work.
Absolutely. And when it's time to work, it's time to damn work. It don't matter. It don't matter whether it's, noon in the fucking daytime, or, it's, 11:30 at night. It doesn't matter when it is. But when it's time, it's, it's time for it. And you can't wait, just like they couldn't wait, like on, which degree that the earth was, facing. So that, like, we didn't have time for none of that shit.
Planetary hours and all that.
Yeah, no. And I'm not, saying this to be disparaging or anything like that to anybody who does. I'm just simply explaining how this work, came to be, and the reason why, we don't necessarily adhere to, those rules or what have you.
Yeah.
Because there was a sense of urgency.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, if you can work during a powerful time, I don't care what system it is, work during that powerful time. If,
But if there's a need.
What I always say is, like with witchcraft, you're working in an unfavorable, moon phase, work harder. Whatever you're going to do, step it up.
Yeah.
You got to overcome whatever resistance is coming from that. I do see some hybrid forms of hoodoo these days that are, looking at planetary timing and moon phases, but that was not traditional. So you said, I'd never heard that before, that conjure came out of the Congo.
The primary root of conjure came from the Congo, absolutely.
How about hoodoo?
It's the same thing.
Same thing?
Same thing.
Okay.
Like I said, like those terms, they basically vary depending on what region that you were in, because again, like when I was a kid, neither one of it was just called work. That's what it was called. That's it. And, depending on the region, if it was primary Catholic, then, you would see a lot of work with the saints. If it was primarily Christian, you would see a lot of work with the Bible, in particular, like the Old Testament. Most root workers today don't have anything to do with the New Testament of the Bible. But, the funny thing about that, which I always, because people often shudder, whenever I talk about the Bible, which I think is kind of like hilarious, because it just, goes to show that there's a whole lot of naivety that's out there. But the Bible ain't nothing but an old spell book. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think that Hoodoo people and the other ATRs that adopted Catholicism and these other forms, do you think that they believed those things, or that they used it to disguise their practices to survive?
It was a tool that was used for survival, first and foremost. Back in the day, when all that was going on, the slaves were considered nothing more than devil worshippers, and they were treated like livestock. And so what the slave masters would do, they would let them or make them go to church, to and I quote, try to civilize them. When they went to church, they were not allowed to go inside the church. They had to stand outside because, again, they were like livestock.
Right.
But, keeping that in mind, going, and standing outside the church, they would hear things. Now, for a good while, there was always, a language barrier, of course. And number two, like, nobody could read or write. Nobody could do any of that, but they could hear. So after, that started to, be something that, they could hear and understand, kind of gave a point of being able to use that against against the master, so to speak. Like when we talk about, like, let's take voodoo for example. Back during the same time, down in Haiti when they were bringing over the slaves, Haiti was, and still is to this day, a French Catholic country.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody was Catholic, and when they would go and try to do ceremonies and such for their spirits, if the slave master didn't see him, and one of the tattletales did, they would go tell the slave master, and then what would happen would be they would get, made examples of.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would, murder them, and torture them in various ways. And so what they decided was, they remembered that when they went to the church, that the Catholic Church, there were always all these images and statues and all this stuff. Like if you've ever been inside a Catholic church, like you see like all kind of shit in there.
Mm-hmm.
And they would see something that reminded them of one of the Loa. Loa are the spirits of voodoo. For example, like they would go to the church and they would see a statue of Saint Moses, and Saint Moses holding the serpent staff. They would look at the serpent that was there, and that reminded them of a Loa whose name is Dombala Wedu. And so they took the saints and they started using that to hide what they were actually doing. So when the slave master came, the explanation is that they were, doing a mass for Saint Moses, or what have you.
It's exactly the same
Well,
in
is
my
Moses
culture.
even a saint?
I don't know.
I never heard that.
But I was just going to say, in Russia, Christianity came to that region in like about 900 AD, and it was the same thing. They were all pagan practitioners. They did their own work, but they they incorporated a lot of Christianity into it because they were sort of forced to convert, and they were afraid of what would happen
Well,
if
the
they totally
same thing
rejected
happened
it.
in
It's the same thing.
Same thing happened in Ireland. Same
Yep.
thing happened in Italy. It's like I grew up butthurt at the Catholic Church about all the terrible things they did to witches, and over time, it's like I came to have a saying. It's like I'd like to thank the Catholic Church for providing my ancestors a convenient place to hide all those years while they were outside hunting for us. They made it. I mean, the Catholics came up with the idea of changing pagan gods into saints. I think they started it in Germany, and then it moved into Ireland and England and Scotland. Just pretty much their idea. Just their idea came to be used to like bite them in the ass. But the first voodoo person that I ever talked to about that, the way he said it was like, this Loa is that saint. He didn't say it was like an archetype represented, similar to, in his mind, they were the same, even though that saint had a very white face.
Well, the thing is that like in some cases, in some cases, they can be synonymous. In all cases, that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
But like, with the Loa, like a lot of the Loa came over from Africa. Some were born in Haiti, and when it comes to the saints, which is why today, in any voodoo ceremony, we have a Catholic litany, and then we have an African litany. So the saints and such are still honored, and in the voodoo, folks still do work with the saints, but that doesn't mean that the saint is the same as that particular law, because they're not. But there are some that one could consider them being the same, like for example, Mambo Philomese, who is Loa, is also Saint Philomena, which they are the same. But it's one of those things to where, like, it's a whole lot of learning that has to be done, to understand, yes, like there's a synchronization of the two, but the two are not, they're not the same at all. Some of them may act similar and such, but originally the reason why the saints were there was to mask what was going on.
Yeah.
And those saints were put in place because of a similarity or a reminder of what a particular law was, like with Moses and the serpent staff, or Saint Ulrich, or not Ulrich, I mean Isidore, being synced with another Loa. His name is Cousin. Like they're not the same at all, but there were similarities that's there that brought them to a point to where they could use that to say, hey, we're having this service or this mass or whatever for the spirits, or for that saint, and not get murdered over it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, no Jesus. They got the saints. They got Jesus?
Oh yeah, they got Jesus.
Well, who's Jesus representative of?
It depends on which Jesus.
Okay.
Like I tell people, and they laugh at me, but I think it's, I don't know. It's just how I function. Like, I think, like all the synchronizations of the saints and the Loa, like all the saints is like there's either this Jesus or there's this Mary. Like there's the Jesus with the crown on his head, with the 3 rays poking out. That's Bosu Tuacan, Bosu of the 3 horns. Like there's like the Mary who's standing, on the water, which would be La Sirene. And they're all, even though there's different saints, like to me it's like whatever. I'm like, which Jesus am I dealing with and which Mary, is it? I mean, that's just the way that I see it. Even though, like, there are, saints, of course, that are not Jesus. I just call them all Jesus because it's just easier that way.
Yeah. Well, I find like in the, definitely like in the Italian equivalent of witchcraft disguised as Catholicism, like Jesus just doesn't really come up. Mary comes up all the time, and,
Sure.
and saints and angels.
Yeah, I recall
but
a
they
Jesus
just don't
figure
really
in
mention Jesus much.
Russian.
I think the Irish version too, the same kind of thing. And like you were saying before, it's like I never want to like take away from anybody. I want to recognize the whole picture. The witches in Italy believed that they were fighting this enslavement of the Catholic Church. And that's why they called on Diana's daughter to come down and, teach them witchcraft and that kind of thing. That seems to be pretty universal everywhere you go. I mean, that maybe except with the ceremonialists. They tend to be like higher class people. But, witchcraft, folk magic, everywhere you go, it's like an oppressed people trying to get justice in their own fucking way. 'Cause it's the only way they can get fucking
my
justice.
people didn't know how to read either.
Yeah.
Like when the Christianity.
Well, and I think that's why most witchcraft, most folk magic was an oral tradition until people could write.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, like, that's another thing that I get fucking tired of hearing about. Are people making assertions that, like, these traditions and such, those are the poor people. That's like, poor people magic, or, what do they call that shit? Low magic or what?
Low magic, yeah.
I don't
yeah,
fucking
yeah.
know. Like whatever
Yes,
the hell it is.
the low magic and high magic.
And I'd be like, I
thing,
promise
yeah.
you, I can show you better than I can tell you.
Yeah.
Like, you want to talk some shit? Okay, let's go. We can do that all day.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that they call high magic is just has really expensive ingredients. Ceremonial magic. It requires very specific
And
stuff, and it's all really
a whole lot
expensive.
of religion involved
Yeah.
in that.
Well, I see a lot of hoodoo will borrow from the Keys of Solomon. But if you actually go to the Keys of Solomon, some of those things had to be made with gold thread on a lead background or something like that, or silver thread. It's like really expensive fucking ingredients, Tibetan silk woven with fucking gold, thread and shit like that. And it's like none of the hoodoo people are doing it that way, and it still fucking works. It's the same symbol. They're not doing it with all the expensive stuff. They're a lot of times, from some of the hoodoo I see it, they're doing it on a photocopier and sticking that symbol in a fucking mojo bag, and it still tends to work for them. So, I guess you didn't need all that expensive shit, huh?
Well, and I mean, and going back to that, and going back to that is, like when it comes to the work, another thing that that I hear a lot of, and again, everybody has to work out their own salvation. I don't give a shit, whatever, but I hear, a lot of people, they say that it's all about your intention. Like what you like, like I don't know, like
He
if you
has a
take
lot to say about
if
that.
you take a candle and you stare at it hard enough,
Yeah.
then it's, and like we simply don't believe that because everything has a spirit, and it's all about it's all about the relationship with those spirits, and also the and when I talk about spirits, I'm not just talking about ancestors. or other spirits, but I'm talking about like the spirit of the root and those sorts of things. Like it's about having a relationship with those spirits and putting them together. Kind of like like when you were a kid, if you ever had a chemistry set, and you had to put like a little baby spoon of this and a little thing of that in order to to make
blow up in your
right.
face.
But like people, like I've heard said that like the roots and such, that go into that work, that's only used to focus the intention. Well, I mean, I don't need to have a leaf in front of me to focus my intention, but it's about taking those combinations and putting them together to overcome a condition. That's what it's about, overcoming a condition. And if you can
He's talking about intent.
overcome a condition, it's more than just intent that goes into. Sure, I can intend. I'll just give you. Let me give you this example. I can intend to, make myself a cheeseburger because I'm hungry. But if I don't get my ass up off of the damn couch and get the meat and the frying pan and put it into the pan on the fire and cook it, then guess what? My intention ain't done shit.
Yeah, or like an analogy that Michael likes to use, that I can intend not to fall off this cliff that I'm about to walk off of, but
You'll
I'm
still
gonna
die.
fall.
Yeah. Nature doesn't give a fuck about your intentions.
Yeah.
Nature has laws.
Yeah.
They're not the threefold law or any of that other shit. There's fucking natural laws. Well, one of the things, one of those natural laws that I see, in all traditions is, I think I coined it on YouTube as, when you banish, you must invoke. If you remove something from nature, you have a certain amount of time to replace that, put something in that hole, or nature will refill that. And I find that constantly, like when I'm working with clients, they'll say, oh yeah, I went and saw this other worker and they removed this curse, in a couple weeks came back. It's like, well, so did that worker have you put anything in there? Or did they put anything in there? I think, I don't know if it's ignorance or if some workers actually know that, and they know that they're going to get that client on the hook every couple weeks for another fucking cleansing. It's like, you can't just take something away without putting something back, or nature's just going to put back what was already there.
Well, I mean, and that's just like, it's just like, in Conjure, as well as in Voodoo, if something is given, something is taken. If something is taken, something is given. Like, that's an old-ass rule.
That's an old-ass rule in witchcraft. For everything that is taken, something must be given. That came straight from Aradia in the Gospel of Aradia, or Gospel of Aradia. And I find that with most of my work, I just remember a bunch of old shit that nobody remembers anymore. I'm not that wise. I'm not that fucking brilliant. I have a long-term memory with regard to magic of all kinds, and everybody knew that. Everybody knew that back in the day, and people don't know that now. For everything that's taken, something must be given.
I mean, we always come across all these newer groups that talk about how...
You're talking about the children?
Yeah,
the baby
babies,
witches.
Yeah, like, all that matters is your intent.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. All right. Well, and also side by side with that is like, do whatever you feel.
Yeah.
And I always argue, it's not do whatever you feel. You need to be educated. But after like 40 years of doing this, when I go to my kit to whip up a recipe, it is whatever I feel. But that's because I've followed the recipe for 40 fucking years.
Right.
Hey, Mojo, shut the fuck up.
Sometimes you just gotta put a little pizzazz on the recipe. Sometimes you want to, change it up just a little bit.
Exactly. You gotta spice it up.
So, I don't know anything about, which particular plants, grow in Africa and the Congo. Like, would you say there were a lot of substitutions that had to happen when they were coming to
there were quite a few that had to happen. But the thing is that, like, every root and every tree has those spirits have a disposition of, they're better at this kind of job than they are at that kind of job. And, and back at that time when, like those things were completely unfamiliar, then, there's always more than one of the same root, or herb or whatever that has a similar disposition. There's always more than one. And so those things had to be found out in order for, not only the work to be effective, but also, gaining almost a new knowledge of, what else, may get the job done. Because, again, like I said, more than one, root or herb will have, a similar disposition. And, honestly, it just depends on, what it is that you're doing at the time. Because the one thing that, folks need to remember, in particular, I found the millennials have to remember is that, back in the day, there wasn't no, Michaels and Joann's and Amazon, to go on to, I have to have this specific ingredient. What they had was what was around them.
Right.
And finding something, which of course was one of those things that, had to be tested, to see if it actually, did what it was supposed to do. They didn't have access to, to any of that. And, like people today have it so much easier than it used to be. Even us, like back in the day, like everything was mail order. If there was something, it was all mail order. Because the internet didn't exist. Cell phones didn't exist. Google was not, even, a thought in his daddy's mind. And, so it's about, again, taking the things that are around you and learning what they are, learning what is their disposition, what do they do, learning all of those things, because all of those things together, what do they add up to? They add up to effective work, and, along the same lines of that is, there's so many folks that like, they think that it's a one and done thing, and, anybody who knows me has heard me say this probably like a million times, is that, they call it spiritual work for a reason. It's not spiritual easy. Because if it was, then, everybody would be doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's, certain plants that have a heating nature about them, and the plants that have a cooling nature about them, and, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. There's what we call like hot roots, and then there's cool roots, and, and there's commanding roots. There's all kinds of, of different things.
Yeah.
And, again, it boils down to, to learning, to learning those things. And, it comes down to understanding them. And, once that learning and understanding is present, then, then it makes it easier to, to begin and to do that work effectively.
What's your top 5 favorite plants or roots?
My number one, hands down, is Solomon seal, which is a commanding root. I love it. Solomon seal to me is kind of like the general in the army.
Does that grow here?
Solomon seal?
Yeah.
I've never seen it here.
Okay, I know it like grows in the redwoods and shit.
Yeah, I've never seen it here. Things like devil shoestring and stuff does grow here. So Solomon seal would be number 1. Number 2 would be pepper. And that can be, red pepper, white pepper, or black pepper, don't matter. I love pepper because pepper can do a couple of different things. Number one, it can take a work and it can, basically light a fire on it. But number two, pepper can also be used in what we would call like trick work, which would be like, I guess what people would call like, they may call them hexes or whatever. What we would call it would be trick work because like in Conjure, like you don't really hear, nowadays it's much more common because of, the children. You don't really hear the word spells. We use like the term trick. And where that comes from is tricking the master. So they could get done what needed to get done. It wasn't about, a curse here or a hex, that it was about, tricking them specifically. And so, so you a lot of the old school workers, you won't really hear the term used, the term spells used, because that's, as far as this work goes, that's not really where it came from. So there's that. Number 3 is High John root. Love it. High John root is what I call the wrecking ball. Because what High John root does is basically it goes in front of you like a wrecking ball and, destroys walls and things that are in the way, of that particular path. I love High John root. And I will tell you this, like, when it comes to High John, one of the things that you should not ever do is cut a High John root, because you want it to be in that, that ball shape, because again, that's what it does. I know people who do cut them, yes, of course, and that's what they do. I personally will not do that, because to me it takes away from the actual job that it does. It's like taking a wrecking ball and cutting it down and shaving it down to where it's, there's nothing left almost, Number 4 would probably be basil. Basil is wonderful, 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 wonderful for cleansing work. Baths with basil are absolutely wonderful, with fresh basil. And it's a good maintainer of cleansing when it comes to like week in and week out. It's a very, very good thing for that. And probably number 5 would be limes. And the reason that it would be limes is because, and a lot of people don't know this, so pay attention. With limes are beautiful, beautiful for cutting work. If somebody's doing work on you or whatever, limes are wonderful for breaking through that and cutting it away. Which is why, like, during certain things, like in Vodou, for example, during certain things that happen, you can't have any limes. You can't eat, limes or have lime juice or limes or lemons, at all, because they tend to cut work.
So you would put lemons in that same category?
Yeah,
limes?
Lemon and lime, yeah. Primarily lime, but lemon as well.
So, with that then, would, if we were combating some voodoo work, wouldn't lime be a good go-to?
Absolutely, lime would be a good.
I always say that it's like, there's some traditions you can't have salt anywhere near the altar. It's like, okay, so salt
That's
is what you use against their type of magic. They have a taboo with it.
That's true because, with salt, salt is something that sends away the dead. So if it's if that work, is involving like a muerto, or a dead spirit, salt is wonderful for that because it'll send away the dead. So that's why, like, when it comes to like ancestor work and such, like it's one of the things that's in my book. Whenever you cook for your ancestors and you eat with them, you never put salt in the food, because salt sends away the dead. So you're kind of working against yourself as opposed to honoring and elevating those ancestors, because it's like somebody putting something in front of you to eat that you're allergic to, that you can't have. So it's really one of those things that, and people will say, oh my God, salt is a neutralizer. Yep, it sure is. It absolutely is a neutralizer, but salt is not a fix-all for everything. A lot of folks seem to think that it is, but it absolutely is not. Like if I was doing work on somebody and their whole defense was salt, I could get through that work in less than 2 seconds. So like, because again, like a lot of folks, that's their go-to.
Yeah.
Like when they do, cleansing baths or whatever, it's salt.
Yeah.
Salt is fine as one of the things that go into a cleansing bath, but that's, the most basic ass cleansing bath that you can do. And and if it's something that's heavier that's going on, salt will not do the trick.
When in Italian witchcraft, it's used against spirits, so you don't have it on the altar. Same kind of thing. And in Ireland, it's offensive to the fae, which are kind of spirits. So that comes up. But I always look at that. It's like the one thing that they shy away from in that tradition is a weapon against the magic of that tradition. So limes, thank you. Just in case, I ever piss off some voodoo person or something.
Well,
in New Orleans,
but it's not even just voodoo that limes will work on. It can be anything, because what it does is it just simply breaks the work. Get your booty hole off me.
So Moise here is not only an expert in all of these things we're talking about, but Haitian voodoo. It's like he's one of the only people that I know that actually goes to fucking Haiti. So how do you spell voodoo?
Vodou.
Okay.
Yeah. But I've actually been meaning to ask you, I can't believe I didn't ask you this before, but what would you say the difference is between Haitian voodoo and New Orleans voodoo?
That was the next question, yeah.
That's certainly a loaded question.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, we'll do that sometimes.
So, in Haitian voodoo is very traditional and very orthodox in a lot of what goes on. In New Orleans voodoo, and it depends on what you define as New Orleans voodoo, when you come, and you come to New Orleans and you go to, one of these places, like in the quarter or whatever, and people tell you that they, quote, practice New Orleans voodoo. It's nothing more than like this mishmash of all of these traditions that they just kind of threw together. Real, in my professional opinion, which matters, by the way, real New Orleans voodoo, you're not going to find unless you go onto the plantations, because that's where it really existed and still does to this day. My godbrother was born and raised in New Orleans voodoo what he tends to call it to differentiate is plantation voodoo, because when people hear nowadays New Orleans voodoo, like they think of like some random ass thing that they saw on TV or read in a book. But he was born and raised on a plantation in St. Francisville, and they have more of a grasp on voodoo and adhere more to the traditions, of voodoo. And people are like, well, I'm not traditionalist and I don't do it. Well, that's good for you, but that ain't how this works. I will tell you point blank that I am a traditionalist, and the reason why I'm a traditionalist is because I think that these traditions were formed and made by the Spirit for a reason. I think that when someone gets into a tradition, and I don't care what tradition it is, it can be some, form of witchcraft, it can be, voodoo, it can be Buddhism, it can be anything, whatever, it is, that the tradition is supposed to mold you. You're not supposed to mold the tradition around you and what your feelings are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, if your feelings are that you can't do this or you can't do that in the tradition, then don't get involved in it.
Well, I have to go. It's just the first time that we had you on the show was the show about gay poleros.
Yeah.
And that allegedly is part of the tradition that there's no gay poleros.
That's a crock of shit, too.
So there's that.
I don't know if we know
Sometimes
any straight
sometimes portions of the tradition are molded by crocks of shit too.
Well, yes. Well, but the thing about that is that, like with that particular issue, that was never something that was addressed by the Nkisi, the Impongos, whichever. It was never addressed by any of them, because they knew better. And the one thing that they forgot, which I think was forgotten intentionally, is that when it comes to any of these traditions, they are led by what? They are led by those spirits. And so it was forgotten because they were afraid that the spirits were going to say something opposite that they were trying to portray, or something that that they were trying to make and to force and change. I've said many times, when it comes to that, if you say that like a gay person can't be a palero because it's against tradition, then why don't you go ask that Impongo why they said yes to my rayado whenever I got scratched. Because if the spirit says something, then who are you to deny the spirit of that?
Yeah. Well, I often say that. It's like that's human shit. That's humans imposing their shit on spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And in at least in Palo, the humans don't get to decide. The spirits decide, and you don't get to argue. Yeah.
So
well, that seems like the same in all the ATRs that I've been privy to know anything about.
Mm-hmm.
But the spirits make the decision, and the priest and priestess are there to perform a ceremony and go along with whatever the divination says.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then you have people that'll be like, well, what if they did the divination but they read it wrong, and that's not what it says, and blah blah blah. Then have somebody else do the damn divination. I don't care. It doesn't matter. And that's the thing, is that people like to, some people I should say, like to try to make these changes and such so they can essentially lord themselves over other people, which again is a crock of shit.
Mm-hmm.
That's not at all like how these things were ever meant to work. And so for people to say stuff like that, and even to this day, the funny part is that like with the Palo thing, it's still like this big giant to do and this big argument back and forth Well, if the people who are saying that gay people can't be a palero, and now they're still having this huge argument with this whole, with the entirety of the Palo community, how right were they in the beginning? Because they're having to now fight for this to be a thing, and it will never be a thing. Which I think is hilarious. Whereas, like in the tradition, when the spirit says something, then you do it. Like in the voodoo, like we do things the same way every single time. Every time. And it doesn't matter if you go to a ceremony in Port-au-Prince or Jacmel or, up in the mountains. It's going to be the same way every single time. Because we have in the tradition what's called reglement. Reglement is the order of things. It's the order of the ceremony. It's the order of how things, are done. And so because of that, like, there's no issue. So, like, I can go to someone else's house to, one of their ceremonies, and I'll sit down there and, I know exactly what's going on, why it's going on. And then if they, if they call me to, to do whatever, whether that's, to salute a loa or whatever it may be, I already know what to do because it doesn't change. It's there, always has been, always will be. And that's why I say that, it is the tradition that is supposed to mold us, not the other way around.
All right, so that's one elephant in the room. The other elephant in the room, I imagine, is going to have some of the same answers. But you're darker than me, but you're pretty white.
I'm Middle Eastern, but yeah.
Middle Eastern. So that doesn't come up either? Hoodoo, Palo,
with me, it's
Voodoo.
With me,
nobody's ever come at you with that?
With me, I can count on one hand. I can count on one hand and not use all the fingers of how many times that has ever come up with me specifically. I cannot speak for other people because I don't know, frankly.
It's probably because you're not on TikTok.
Whatever. Like, I could care less about that bullshit. But does it come up? Absolutely. But then we go right back to the beginning of this, and that if the Spirit says something, you don't have a say in it. Spirit said this, and and the other thing is that, like, if that were the case, like, how come it is that I can get on a plane right now and I can go to Haiti right now, and when I get off of that plane, there'll be an entourage of people there at the airport to meet me there. There'll be, like, I know everybody down there. And so, like, if that was, such the case, then why is there nothing being said, down there when it comes to me? As a matter of fact, like, like, one of the reasons why I go so much to Haiti is because I have a family there. I have a house there. And, like, one of the oaths that, I took many, many years ago is that I would always make sure that that I wasn't one of the ones, who, went down to get my initiation and then leave and then never come back, because that not only is a slap in the face to the Loa, but it's also a slap in the face to the people that's there that did all of that work, that, have the Loa running in their blood, literally. Because when you go down to Haiti, that's a whole other ball game. Voodoo here is great and it's wonderful and it's powerful. Down in Haiti, whole nother thing. When you get off the plane down there, you can feel the Loa, like, in the air, in the dirt, in the water, in everything. It's very, very, like, it's one of those things to where you have to really take a step back, because I can tell you, it's not what, what people would normally think at all.
How did you initially meet people there? How did you initially meet the people that you now know who are over there?
I kept going.
But like when you first went.
I first went with my godmother.
Okay.
Godmother in Palo
In
or
Vodou.
in Vodou.
Yeah.
I first went with.
So you already had a godmother over here.
Yes.
Okay.
She is. At the time, she was living in Long Island, and she's from Pétionville in Haiti, and then so I went down. I went down with her. I had already, gone through some voodoo things here that you can do in the U.S. I'd gone through some stuff here, and then I had gone down there for to Kanzo to initiate. And, initiations are different in the way that, like, there's a lot of initiations that, you have to start out as like, I don't even know, like a first degree and then a second degree and then a third degree. Well, in voodoo, it's different. The Loa decide.
Mm-hmm.
So
you just like skip ahead.
And that's
It's the
exactly,
Loa.
and then
All right.
that's exactly what happened with me.
Okay.
I wasn't intending, on that at all, but that's what happened. And when they speak, you listen.
All right.
So, I had gone down there, and I was there for right about 3 weeks or so. The initiation in voodoo down in Haiti takes about 9 days, between 9 and 10, depending. It's very, very long. And it's the hardest thing that I've ever done in my entire life. Like, I'll tell you that point blank. Like, there's nothing that I've ever gone through before that was more difficult than that. But I thank God for that. And then, after that was done, and, I came back and, did stuff that, that I needed to do here. Then I went, I would, start going back down there. And I'll go back down there for like ceremonies and, and all that stuff, because in voodoo, it's a very hands-on thing. Like, that's how you learn.
Yeah.
I could tell you philosophy, of voodoo and, all the book shit all day long, but you're not going to learn it that way. You learn it by doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made it a point that, I was going to do everything in my power to, to learn and such. And so that's exactly what I did. So, I typically, go down, I don't know, like, I usually go down anywhere between 1 and 3 times a year. Mm-hmm. Just depending on, what's going on, what's needed, what ceremonies we may be doing, for what's, whichever, Loa, for like, any of their feast days and, all that stuff.
So you learned Creole as you went there more?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And here, I had a friend that was here who moved away. This was, oh God, I don't know, maybe 7 years ago or whatever. But I had a friend here who was Haitian, that I would meet with once a week.
Here in New Orleans?
Here in New Orleans, yeah, to learn Creole. And then, he moved away, but that didn't stop me from learning, because one of the things that you have to understand about voodoo is that it's not done in English.
Right, right.
You can't go down to Haiti and speak English and just, expect
Right.
because of your American privilege
Right.
that people are going to understand
Right.
you, because they're going to look at you like you got 4 heads.
Yeah. So in that vein, I do speak a little bit of French. Is it still kind of taboo, like to only speak French if you don't know any Creole, or will they kind of understand?
Well,
it?
they'll
Maybe
understand.
not?
No, they'll understand. They'll understand some French. A lot of folks down in Haiti, though, they will kind of, they may or may not turn their nose up at you if you're speaking French to them.
Yeah.
But is it better than English? Like in comparison,
Yes, anything is better than
it's
English.
better than English. Okay.
Anything is better than English when it comes to being down there. But the thing is that, like, you have to understand, like, there's things that you have to do and work that you have to do, because it's not like, and I hate, loathe, and despise the American mindset, which is, hand me
too.
everything
Me
on a
too.
silver platter and blah, blah, blah. Bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to do that at all.
Even in Europe, like, I would see the Americans there, and I would just like cringe. And I mean, at least I would try to speak the language, like whether I was in Spain or France or Italy or wherever. And people weren't that bad because I was at least trying to speak their language. But the Americans who just speak English and expect everybody to know, it was just embarrassing.
Well, it is. It's a thing, and like, if you go down there, they're just gonna, like, you're gonna get the side eye a whole lot.
Yeah.
So, are you a priest in Voodoo?
I am.
What's that called?
Ungan.
Yeah,
Hougan.
I'm sure you've seen that.
I'm a high priest in Voodoo, which
I know
the
that
technical term would be I'm an Ugan Asogwi, because there's two different types of. Well, actually, there's three. One you only get from the mountains, that's a little bit different, even though it's the same. It's a little bit different, but with the what's called the Asson lineage, you have the Ugan or Mambo Asogwe, which is the high priest or the high priestess, and then you have what's called Ugan or Mambo Supwen, which is kind of like for lack of a better term, like a junior priest or junior priestess. So I'm an Asogwe. So, like, I can, I can have my own house, run my own ceremonies, do all of that, all of that stuff.
So if somebody over here expresses some sort of interest in it, do you always, like, if it's somebody that you're gonna take seriously, do they always have you take them to Haiti
Absolutely.
every time?
If they want to if they need to conzo or whatever, absolutely. I do not do conzos in the U.S. You don't. You just don't.
Okay.
Like, first of all, half of the stuff that's needed for a conzo you can't even get here. Second of all, conzo is initiation.
Okay.
But half of the stuff that you even need for a conzo you can't get here. Number two, the ceremonies that go on, like, some of them are 24/7. Like, they don't stop. So, that becomes a challenge. Even like people that may have basements or whatever. But also, like, the other thing is with in a conzo, there's a lot of sacrifice involved.
Let's take a break because I want to talk specifically about that in case anybody needs to pee or something.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
We'll be back.
Flickering the shadows fall across my eyes, across the walls. Time engulfs me once more. I'm in the place and I'm enthralled. The mist that creeps, the hound that howls, the lightning illuminates the towers. Is it only I can see the beauty of the beast? Your magic never ceased. With quickening pulse, what lies behind the door? A curious step retreats once more. The creature with a darkened soul. The story of the damned unfolds. Bella, Boris, Basilon, Laurie, Vincent, now all gone. Looming pallid on the screen, the beauty of the beast. Your magic never ceased. And now, though a curtain has been drawn, you go on forever as before.
Widdershins. We're in the midst of our talk with Hoodoo Sen Moise, and we're just going to pretend like we didn't just talk about this shit off the air, but we were talking about sacrifice in in voodoo and the other traditions you're involved in. So let's hear what you had to say. It's like, what is the purpose of animal sacrifice? Let's be specific. Animal sacrifice in your traditions.
Well, that's always a very taboo subject.
Mm-hmm. That's why we're talking about our Widdershins.
Which, you know what? I think I'm going to actually do an entire class on animal sacrifice.
You should. Yeah. Do it at Hexfest. You still haven't put in what your classes are going to be, right?
I have not. I might.
You probably get so many people in that workshop.
I may very well just do that. Yeah. But when it comes down to sacrifice, first and foremost, sacrifice has been going on for many thousands of years. Yeah. Even still to this day. When it comes to animal sacrifices, like in the voodoo specifically, because I'm a priest in that tradition, so I can tell you, when it comes down to animal sacrifice in the voodoo, you have... Well, let me back up just a second. Voodoo is, number one, not, and I say this again, it is not a solitary practice. It has never been, and it never will be. But the purpose of, one of the purposes of sacrifice, when you go to a ceremony in the voodoo, you go to a ceremony to do, number one, to commune with the Loa who come down and visit. Number two, to feed the Loa. And number three, to feed the people. Because, people will come to ceremonies because they're hungry. Right. And, so the blood of the sacrifice belongs to the spirit. The body of the sacrifice belongs to the people. Yeah. Because that's how they eat.
So you're eating the sacrifice.
Yes. Yeah, because a ceremony in voodoo is also, it's also called a fete. A fete is a party.
Yep.
And so, for a party, like, if you don't have, like, food and stuff like that, like, well, first of all, like, that's rude.
Yeah.
But in this case, like, you'll have people who will come to the ceremony because they're hungry and they want to eat.
And fete can also be translated as feast, which implies food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has. There's several different meanings that can be used for it, and so when it comes to the sacrifice, understand this, that like down in Haiti, there's not a damn grocery store on every single corner for people who are so against animal sacrifice.
Yeah.
But they'll go to the damn grocery store and get their sacrifices gift wrapped because that's all it is.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Go on and get you some of that chicken over there. That's already gift wrapped for you.
Right.
And it's it's not looked at in a way that, like, specifically in America, that it is, because all of those things are needed. And the sacrifice is never wasted.
And for me, like the word sacrifice implies that it's something you're not necessarily comfortable with, and that's what makes it a sacrifice.
Right.
If it's something that like isn't a big deal and you're just going to do it like that, that's not really a sacrifice.
Yeah, it's like I've often said that. It's like, I don't like killing roosters.
I don't like it either, but
That's why it's a sacrifice to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but even in the voodoo, like you don't really even hear that term used a lot.
Right.
The term that you hear that's used is feeding the spirit or feeding the people. Like that's what it is. And I'm sorry, but if people have a problem with that, that's their problem to have. Because that's just not the way. Just because you have the luxury of getting your sacrifices gift wrapped, doesn't mean that everybody else does. And especially people that at least in the U.S. who grew up around some sort of a farm or farming or whatever. Exactly what I'm talking about. But when it comes to the sacrifice that's done, those are the reasons why it's done. And so therefore we still do them, because the spirits need the blood. The life is in the blood.
Yeah.
The spirits eat the blood, the people eat the body, and the remains, depending on which spirit and what may or may not be needed, will go into something else, like the goats, for example. The skins from the goats may go to making new drums. Some of the bones may go to making, I don't know, something else or whatever. So it's not the thing that people their their perception of things are. That's just not how it's not how it is. And they can learn all about voodoo by watching American Horror Story if you wanna, but that ain't nothing but a crock of bullshit as well.
Yeah.
Well, that brings me to a question that I have. It's like, so in Palo, we got Lucero. And Santeria, you got Elegua. And all these traditions, like, that's the gateway. You've got to go through that one first to talk to any of them. What is there an equivalent in voodoo?
Well, I was speaking before about what's called reglement, or the order of things. We do have we do have what's called a gatekeeper, which his name is Legba. But And here's another thing I'm going to drop on you, because everybody's always like, oh, Legba comes first. Legba does not come first in a ceremony. The one who comes before Legba is called Grand Chemin. Grand Chemin is the Great Road. And so it is the road that connects from wherever the ceremony is to Guinea. Guinea is spiritual Africa. So we call Grand Chemin first, then we call Legba, to open those gates, if he sees fit to do so, because sometimes the Loa will say no.
And they don't really have that equivalent in Palo or Ocha, as far as I know.
No,
I think it's always like Elegua or Lucero. But there's like something beyond that in Voodoo.
But in both of those traditions, there is a connection to the crossroads, the road opener. So I wonder if that's like related somehow.
Well, that may be, and that's another thing is that like people always talk about Legba at the crossroads. Yes, Legba does reside at the crossroads, but does Legba own the crossroads? No. His brother does. And his brother's name is Kaufu. He's the one who Legba opens gates. His brother owns the crossroads. And so, like that's another thing that, folks, get confused about, just because of things that, that may have been written or, put on TV or whatever.
Yeah. It's like we love American Horror Story, but we don't expect it to be accurate about any of those traditions, including ours.
No, absolutely not.
It's entertainment.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, of course it is. Like, but like the way that they portrayed Legba on American Horror Story couldn't be farther from the truth.
So
that's not Legba at all. Doesn't even look like him.
So you don't give Legba Coke.
No, he doesn't eat babies.
He doesn't eat babies.
And Legba does not wear a fucking top hat.
Yeah, there's that.
And Legba doesn't speak in a Jamaican accent. Legba doesn't have locks. Like there's a whole lot of stuff that, like, and I'm like, where the hell did you come up with this? Because that's absolutely like the furthest thing from the truth. When it comes to that. But again, people are going to do what they're going to do, and like I said, everybody has to work out their own salvation. So if that's what they want to believe that Legba is, then have at it, boo boo. Because it's
for the longest time
false.
in witchcraft, it's like if you portrayed it inaccurately, there'd be all these organizations that jump up your shit. But American Horror Story got a pass by everybody, it seems.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's like everybody's was fucked up. But it was good. It was good. I mean, it's still my favorite American Horror Story.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit
accurate.
that it was entertaining. It absolutely was. Yeah. But I mean, as far as it being like, the truth, no. Like there was a scene in one of the episodes where Marie Laveau was like calling zombies or something like that.
Yeah.
And then she was levitating or some. I don't remember.
Yeah, she was levitating.
But if you look on the floor, she had a veve drawn out, and the veve was Maman Brigitte. Who was in the graveyard, but she's drawing the veve in chalk. We don't do that.
What do you draw it in?
Cornmeal. Sometimes you may use. Sometimes, depending on who it is, it could be done. It'll be done in coffee. Sometimes it'll be done in gunpowder. Just depending on on who it is.
And
but
do you light the gunpowder?
Like fula?
No.
Yeah, just like fula.
Yeah.
But by and large, 99% of veve that's done is done in cornmeal. And
So they don't have like an equivalent to cascarilla, like the eggshell.
cascarilla?
Yeah, they don't do that.
No.
Okay.
No, veve are done in cornmeal.
Okay.
And contrary to popular opinion, when you're dropping a veve, you're not sitting down. Veve is done with you standing up, bent over, doing it, which is, let's just say, it's painful, in the least.
Well, also you're sprinkling rather than drawing. That sounds kind of complicated.
You're drawing it through your fingers,
Mm-hmm.
and you're basically making the veve through your fingers. But yeah, so that's how that's done. When I saw that on American Horror Story, I was like, why the fuck is she using chalk?
Yeah.
But it just goes to show that whatever information that they may have gotten was bullshit.
Yeah, and how they had him as like a spirit who did a lot of cocaine.
I asked him earlier. I
Right,
said,
the
so you
cocaine,
don't give him
the
Coke?
cokehead baby
I said,
eater.
no, you don't give him Coke.
Yeah.
You do the pate pembe, or you do the veves in Coke. Sprinkle Coke. And he whiff it up.
No.
No.
Oh my god! Yeah,
That'd be a lot of Coke.
it sure would be. So yeah. So with that, I mean, there's a whole lot of foolishness, and bullshit that goes around. I mean, I can tell you, probably 90% of what you'll find on the internet is bullshit.
Yeah.
Because voodoo is an oral tradition to this day. It still is an oral tradition.
Like Palo.
Just like I'll tell you, like when I was learning, my godmother lived in Long Island, and I would have a question about something, some random thing, and I'd call her on the phone. And I would say, hey, Ma, I have this question for you. And I would tell her the question, and she would always say the exact same thing. Oh, baby, I tell you next time I see you. And so what I had to do was I had to fly to Long Island. I used to fly to Long Island twice a month. Just to be able to learn. It was either Long Island or I had to go to Haiti. So it was back and forth. And that's what people don't understand, is that that's part of the sacrifices that we make. Yeah. Because and I didn't understand it at the time, but I do, I do get it now. I mean, it clicked. And that is that if it doesn't cost you something, or there's no inherent value to it, and somebody just hands it to you on a silver platter, then what is it really worth?
Yeah.
There's an example that I always use when it comes to this, and that is let's say that I don't know, you go to Walmart and you find this purse that's there and it's $15. And so, and it looks all nice and cute or whatever. So you buy this purse and then you have it. And then 3 days later you go and you get a purse from Versace or something like that, which is $2,000. Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Which one of those two things are you going to hold more value to?
Right.
Are you going to drag your Versace purse on the ground and just, treat it like a piece of junk? I think not. I don't know many people that would say that they would. But what are you going to do with that Walmart purse? You're going to drag it on the ground and do just whatever to it? Of course. Yeah. Having to pick between the two, that's what you're going to do. So
and that's how it works. The only sunglasses I've never lost are the expensive ones. The cheap ones, if they're gas station sunglasses, I'll lose them the next day.
Well, I respect that that's traditional, But in my vast years, there is no magical tradition on earth that has worked for. Oral traditions. It always fails. Somebody dies and doesn't pass on half their fucking knowledge. And shit gets lost all the time. That's why witches started writing shit down.
It's like
that's
that,
why
that
the
game
book.
of
That's
telephone.
why the Book of Shadows is called the Book of Shadows, because before that everything was an oral tradition, and that at a certain point people believed that they were the last of the witches alive from their lineage, and they started writing shit down. And so it was called the Book of Shadows to mark the dark period that our people came through, to where we were no longer able to pass it, mother to daughter, father to son, oral tradition. It just didn't work anymore. So people started writing shit down. Just like so much gets lost in the attempt to uphold oral traditions. I respect that people are still trying. I hope it's going to work for some.
I mean, I absolutely can understand that point. But I will say that, as it stands now, as far as the voodoo goes, it's still, working pretty well, because, there's always a system in place.
Mm-hmm.
Like if such and such, passes on, there's always, someone that's there. There always has been. Granted, in different voodoo houses, they'll do some things differently. Reglement never changes. But the way that someone may do this type of work or that type of work, that may, that may change. Or like in some voodoo houses, they will synchronize this Loa with that particular saint, that another house will synchronize that Loa with a different saint, which there's nothing wrong with, with that at all, because reglement is still in place. And in voodoo, if you understand and know what the reglement is, then you're in decent shape. And again, there's always someone else to go to, for example, my marraine, which is basically, she wasn't my godmother, but she was my godmother for my baptême or baptism, and we used to talk, all the time, about all kinds of stuff and work and how to do this or that. And we're coming up on the 2-year mark when she passed away. And so I'm I didn't have that source.
Yeah.
But I have another source that's there for that reason.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's typically depending on the house or whatever, there's usually, or should be, a system in place for it. But it doesn't mean that there is or that there isn't. It just depends on on the house.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, do you remember that show? I loved the show, and I was so mad when they canceled it. Carnival. It was that show that was on HBO about the carnival that was going around, and basically it was good versus evil. One had these powers, to fight this evil who had these powers, or whatever.
Yeah.
There was a line in that show that I'll never forget, because it is very, very applicable, not just to this, but to a lot of other things. And and what they said was specifically is every prophet in his house or in her house, so in other words, reglement is universal. Within the confines of a societe or a house, they have what they may do, and then what another house may do, when it comes to work, spiritual work and that sort of thing. But there's always a system in place. Like I said before, if someone passes or whatever, like there's a go-to, outside of that. And like the go-to that I have after my Marin, after she passed, is one of the closest people that I have down in Haiti. He actually is the one that when I'm going down there to do a ceremony, he runs the ceremonies. He becomes the master of the ceremonies, and he makes sure that everything that has to be done is done, and then we spend time together and talk and all this stuff, and he will show me, like, this is how you would do this, and this is how you would do that, but that's always present, and if God forbid something should happen to him, there's someone behind him that people in the societe could go to. I mean, they can come to me, they could but there's someone else there that is in place for now, because there's always a plan for for that. So the thing with the writing everything down and stuff like that, which absolutely I agree, does have its place, but the problem with that is that voodoo is filled with a lot of secrets that you cannot write down. And so, like, to have something written down that could potentially, because it's very protective over those secrets, so to have something written down that that could be like given to the masses or whatever, that they should not know, that becomes like a point of contention. Because like if you do that, basically you're giving away secrets that have been guarded for thousands of years, and so they get nervous about that.
Yeah. Well, like I know, like in Palo, there's like a taboo for writing books, so there's very few fucking books. But I attribute a lot of the homophobia and misogyny within Palo to that. It's like the people that have passed it down are the people holding those beliefs. And there's nobody, none of the elders ever wrote anything down, so these people are passing on what they believe the elders passed down. I don't know that there's not really an easy solution to these. I just see problems.
Well, I mean, I don't really think that there is an easy solution to it. I mean, other than the fact of, like, when you get in any of these traditions, you learn every single possible thing that you can, and as you well know, like being elders and stuff, like, we still to this day, we are still learning. We're still perpetual students. Just because like I'm an elder doesn't mean that I know everything, and no one can say that. Nobody. There's a particular Mambo who I absolutely adored. I loved her. I used to go to ceremonies at her house in Brooklyn, and we would sit down and we would watch episodes of Bernie Mac. And she's she's very, very well known still to this day, but her name was Mama Lola. And we would watch episodes like of Bernie Mac, and we would just sit at the table and just talk. And like in moments like that, really is when you learn the most. But she said, and at the time she was probably 70 or so. I think she was 70, somewhere right around that. Maybe 73. But anyway, she would say that she's been around a long time. But she would say point blank, I don't, I'm still learning. I know a little bit, but I'm still learning.
That's the best elders. That
And
say
and
that,
she, yeah, I mean, Lola was up there in age, like, but there was such a humility that was there, which was always very, like, I was in awe, of that a lot, and then like with my godmother, the way that I know as much as I do, because I'm not saying this to, out of hubris or pride, but I know a lot.
Pride's okay around here.
Like from all those trips I had to take. And so, like when I would go to her house in Long Island, I would go there and then she'd be sitting at like the kitchen table or whatever with some of her friends, some other, mambos or ugans or whatever. And I would go there and she would look at me and she would say, "Go sit on the couch." Like that was it. I was like, "What do you mean? I just flew all this damn way to go sit on the couch." And then I kind of like, I got the message of what she was really saying is that go sit over there and listen. Because you learn the most, like more than you would in a formal class of just sitting around and listening to elders talk. I can't tell you how much shit that I learned just sitting on the couch.
I hope voodoo doesn't die out under the millennials, because that's
one
thing they can't do.
I can assure you it wasn't.
They
As long as
can't sit and
Haiti is a
listen.
place,
Yeah.
it won't.
They don't have Haitian millennials.
But they still know what they still know what the voodoo is.
It's like
And
sitting and listening. That's not their strong point.
No, and that's the thing. But like down, they all know. Down there, they all know. This is what you're gonna do. This is how it's gonna be, and this is how this goes on. You just sit down and you fucking listen. That's it. And that's where you actually learn like the most valuable and the most powerful things that you can learn. Because let me tell you something, when they get around the damn table and they be talking all kind of shit. Like I learned all kind of different works and shit like that. I just be there on the couch with my little fucking what do you call that? My composition notebook thing.
You allowed to take notes?
And then they didn't know.
But you're allowed.
I made sure that they couldn't see me. And so
I one time recorded my tata saying all this stuff because it was too much to take notes. And when he found out, he bade me to delete it, and I did. But God, it was a wealth of shit. So I just couldn't have written down that shit that fast. It just kept talking and talking and talking and talking. So I just hit record on my fucking phone.
Oh,
He
yeah.
was pissed off when he found out.
Yeah, well, like that's the thing is that like you have to listen. Like sometimes you got to be like innovative, and you have to kind of like sometimes you just got to be sneaky. I mean, she knew exactly because it was her idea. Like that's what she would make me do.
Yeah.
And that's the purpose why she made me do it. But like if I could encourage anybody, with this, it would be to, when you have elders sitting down at a table talking, listen to what they say. They can be fucking talking bullshit about anything. It doesn't matter. But there's going to be nuggets that's given that are worth their weight in gold.
Yeah.
And so, like, when it gets right down to that, that's exactly what you need to do. and then you will know a whole lot more than you would if someone was in front of you, like just simply teaching a class.
Yeah. Keep rolling. I'm gonna grab a beer. You need a drink? You good?
No, I'm good.
All right.
So,
I missed a part of this conversation.
which was basically the part of the conversation was like, like how I know as much as I do when it comes to the voodoo, and which again, part of the sacrifice was having to to fly to Long Island twice a month or go to Haiti, and I would go, and my godmother would be sitting around the table with other Ugan and Mambu, and then when I went to go over there, she made me go sit on the couch.
Wow.
That's what she would do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a little offended by that, so I sat on the couch and I ear hustled.
Yeah.
And so the whole point of that was that ear hustling and such, you get nuggets of knowledge and wisdom that you won't get in front of a class, and how to do these things or whatever. Like you don't get that. So the point of all that is that, like, if there are elders that are like sitting at a table or whatever, just shooting the shit or talking, sit down and listen, because there's always going to be nuggets dropped.
Mm-hmm. Do they still have you sit on the couch?
No.
Or you passed that point?
Mm-hmm.
So, which were you initiated into first? Was it Palo or Voodoo?
Voodoo.
Okay.
Voodoo was first. Palo was second.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get your Palo initiation in New Orleans, or did you
No,
have to
my
travel?
Palo, and my Rayado was done in Miami.
Okay.
My padrino, who at the time was, he had been a Tata for like 41 years. He was like, I don't know, 73 years old whenever I got scratched.
Mm-hmm.
But that was all done in Miami.
Okay.
Because that's another thing. It's like so much easier to do a Rayado here than like to even attempt to do a Conzo. Like, it's impossible, because there are certain things that you just don't have here. You can't get here.
Right.
And people like to quote do Conzos and stuff in Miami and some in New York, which is bullshit, because like one of the things that's needed for a Conzo is something that, in order to have, it's basically like at a minimum probably 20-25 year investment, because there is a specific tree that all these ceremonies are done over for years. That
What's a Conzo?
initiation.
For which?
Voodoo.
Voodoo, okay.
Yeah.
So what, you need to grow the tree?
And continue to do all the ceremonies until the tree,
Wow.
and until the tree.
You're not going to tell us what the tree is?
Huh?
Can you tell us what the tree is?
Well, you already know what it is.
I know, but can you tell them?
No, I cannot tell them.
Okay.
Oh,
You-
it's
you-
the
And that
we
tree
know
grows
about.
here.
That tree does grow.
Yeah,
here.
we still need to get that tree.
Because I had one in my backyard.
Huh.
But yeah, it's the same tree, which
That's
is also
interesting.
very interesting.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Mm-hmm.
We also found out it's possible to grow the frankincense tree here.
Oh, really?
You looked it up.
Oh, I did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And dragon's blood. It could grow. Maybe. Yeah.
We have the road Abre
Camino's doing pretty good.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now.
Yeah.
We could not grow it in Los Angeles.
No way.
We tried.
Oh, it'll grow here for sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
it
it
grows
should.
here. I think it wants the humidity. I think it was too dry where we were.
Mm-hmm.
We tried, and we could not get that thing to live. And here, it's not really.
Yeah,
a
humid
problem.
places are very good for Abre Camino
Yeah.
to grow. Why, I have no idea, but
One of my students managed to do it in a greenhouse with the hydroponics in Oregon. And he seemed to be able to transport it outside. He has it growing outside now. I've seen pictures. So.
Maybe
I don't know,
after
because
it
they get a
gets
lot of
established
fucking
or
rain. Maybe, I don't know
Yeah.
if Oregon's more humid.
I mean, they
or
do
what.
have a lot of rain.
they do. But
so-
it's cold as fuck there
Yeah.
Probably got to bring it in
in the wintertime.
at night,
Shit.
yeah. Yeah.
I went to Oregon one time during the winter months, and I was like, oh no. And of course it started snowing, and I was like, hell no.
Yeah.
I'm not messing with y'all on that. Mm-mm.
Well, I think the last year or so, it's like, it used to be Oregon, it rained every day. But not now with the droughts and shit that got
They
going
had
on
a
there.
serious
Climate
drought
change is serious.
This last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of fires.
Yeah.
Where it used to be Oregon rained too much to, support fires.
Right.
Shit
One thing we
changing.
don't have to worry about here from California.
No.
California, you're like always worried about the fires,
Yeah.
During fire season and
Oh, yeah, no, not here.
earthquakes. We don't have that problem here.
No.
We just
Well-
have hurricanes.
Well, was it Terrebonne Parish?
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, is wants to do fracking. I saw it on a bumper
really?
sticker, and we will get earthquakes if they frack. So that's
Yeah.
the rest of the country. Wherever there's fracking now, they have fucking earthquakes. So enjoy it while you can, basically.
Lord, yes, indeed.
I'm more worried about fires than earthquakes, but
Yeah.
still.
So, how hard is it to get a reading with Hoodoo Sen Moise?
It's
Our
really
listeners
not
wanna
that
know
difficult. You can go onto my website, which is hoodoosenmoise.com, and you can book it right there.
So if somebody doesn't live here, you can still do it?
Yeah, I'll do it by phone. I mean, I have clients all around the world, so
Yeah.
that's not really a thing.
Yeah.
I can, if they're usually like my clients that are out of the country, I use WhatsApp for the reading. I do not do what the hell do they call that shit? FaceTime, and I don't do all that.
So
I
just
don't.
audio.
Yes, it's just me. It's
No
me
Skype?
and them on. No, I don't do all that because no, I'm just not like. First of all, like holding a phone up in front of your damn face while you're trying to do a reading is a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
number two, I ain't got no time for all that shit. So you want the damn reading, then we're gonna do the damn reading. I don't care if there's a picture of me or whatever. We're gonna do it on the phone,
Yeah.
and that's it. Like that's just how it's done. But again, I will be in Salem from the 26th to the 30th.
You're doing readings there, right?
Oh yeah, I'll be doing readings there. Usually when I go to Salem, I'll take a day, and at the Hawthorne Hotel, which is kind of like in the dead center of Salem.
I saw some pictures of it.
Yeah, they have this kind of like a restaurant type of thing called Tavern on the Green, which I enjoy because they have good like seafood chowder and stuff like that, which I like. And so I'll go and I'll sit at one of the tables, and then I have folks come in, and they're always really nice to me about that. The people that work there. I'll go sit at the damn table, and then I got clients that that will come in. So I'll spend a day doing readings, and they just come in and then they meet me there. That's
Haven't I-
normally what I do.
Haven't I seen you meet clients here at the Golden Lantern?
You have.
One time, yeah. So,
You have, yep.
you
I will
can get
meet. Yep, I meet
in-person
clients.
readings here.
Yep, here at the Golden Lantern because I've been reading. Actually, I've been reading out of there for I don't even know how many years it's been. It's forever. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, like I'll do them over the phone. I don't do Skype. I don't do FaceTime. I don't do Zoom.
Yeah.
I don't do all that because it's too much of a pain in the ass. But then, if folks can't make it to Salem, then the weekend of the 12th, the weekend of the 12th of November, I will be in Cleveland. And I'm doing a whole weekend of classes and readings there. And then I took on one other... in Cleveland, it's... what is... Hold on just one second. Because I always get the name confused. And I always want to call it something else, even though I know what the damn name is. But hold on for me, just 1 second.
Yes, HoodooSenMoise.com, right?
Yes, that's the website, HoodooSenMoise.com. You can book a reading on there. And then the weekend of November 12th. I'll be in Cleveland and doing a weekend of teaching and readings there, and I will be at the New Moon, which is owned by a wonderful lady named Dawn Bartos. Her and her husband own the store, and it's really a wonderful place. It's a very large space, and so there's always room. So you can catch me there in Cleveland the weekend of November the 12th, and then I decided to take on one more just to close out the year. I know. Swear to God, like.
A lot of travel.
Yeah, that will be December 3rd, 4th, and 5th. I will be just outside of Atlanta at Wicked Mojo, and we're discussing on what's going to be happening. It's either going to be like a weekend of just of classes, which vary from conjure work to voodoo, or we're going to do a voodoo intensive that particular weekend, which will be the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th. And there's a whole lot of stuff that we're going to be going over down there. So if you're in the Atlanta area or what have you, it's actually, the store is located, if I remember correctly, in Conyers, which is maybe 25 minutes from Atlanta. And so there's, really nice folks that are there. The owner, whose name is Raven Shiara, very, very, wonderful lady, and so we're going to be down there and doing all of that stuff. And so if you can't make Salem, those are 2 other opportunities that you have. So I don't want to hear nobody coming to me talking about, oh, I can't do this, I can't do this. When are you coming to Seattle?
So
Well,
if they go to
speaking of which, do you ever go to like that far west?
Not typically. No, I mean,
if they paid you enough, would you go?
yes. I would. I mean, I have no no qualms about going over there. It's just a matter of, when somebody contacts me and, and they want me to come, because my travel schedule fills up rather quickly. And so, like, when it comes to my travel schedule, it's, first come, first serve. And
Are you ever in Just curious because we're both from California. Do you ever go to California?
No. I'm not opposed to it, but
Nobody's
I
had
don't.
you go.
Okay.
There's someone, and I cannot remember. Her name, but there's someone that wants to bring me to. I believe it's Phoenix.
Ew.
Yeah, yeah. So that may be like the closer part that I get. like I'll be in Denver sometimes.
Right.
I'll be in Nebraska sometimes. I'll be in Texas sometimes. New Orleans, of course. Atlanta, Cleveland, Salem, New Hampshire.
Ohio.
Yeah, I mean, so it just depends because again, it's when it comes to my travel schedule, it's first come first serve, and
Yeah.
and it typically fills up rather fast. So
if they go to hoodoosenmoise.com, can they get a list of where you're going to be? You teach classes off of there too, or is that somewhere else? 'Cause
no,
I know you're doing
usually
Zoom classes.
most of my classes are in person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not opposed to doing like Zoom classes or whatever. Not opposed to that. I don't like those platforms.
Yeah.
I would rather have somebody that's sitting in front of me,
Right.
as opposed to somebody that's sitting behind a computer screen.
Yeah.
Just because, in my opinion, it makes not only for a better experience, but there's also more of an opportunity to learn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Zoom is fine, but my preference is always in person.
Mm-hmm. So if they go to hoodoosenmoise.com, can they get a list of the places where you're going to be appearing, or where do they find that?
They can whenever I
Updated.
update it and I post it. I'm working on my 2022 travel schedule now, and just getting that together. I know that like in 22, like I'll be in Detroit, I'll be in Omaha, Nebraska, and I'll be in Atlanta, and I'll also be where the hell? Maybe Phoenix.
Tennessee. No. Just kidding.
Actually, I've been asked to go to Tennessee, but when I go, when someone asks me to come and teach, I'm not doing that like out of where it comes, the cost comes out of my pocket.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
You at least need like travel expenses and shit.
No, travel expenses will be, which is plane ticket and hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Those things, that's just, and quite frankly, it's not because I'm greedy or whatever, but I'm fucking old. So
Yeah,
guess
so
what?
you over there that wants him to go to Denver, man, that's what he needs. Over there in the chat room, Alan.
Oh, what did he say?
Is that
He was
Jackson?
asking if you were going to go to, Alan Jackson. How'd you know that?
Well, 'cause
Oh, I
that's
know
the-
Alan.
That's
Okay.
that's the Alan we all know.
Yeah.
Alan Jackson.
Yeah, I know, but how did you know? Because all I said was Alan. Okay.
Well, that's
Yeah.
the Alan I know.
Alan's asking about Denver.
Oh, I think he lives in Colorado.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Alan lives in Colorado.
Yeah.
Actually, I met Alan at Hexfest a few years ago. Whenever he was
We met
here.
him at this last one.
Oh, and I should mention, this next Hexfest is going to be Hoodoo Sen Moise's triumphant return to Hexfest. We still don't know what he's teaching because he's such a diva. He hasn't posted it yet. So
But it's gonna
when
be
I
good.
plug
They
Hexfest,
get it when they
Good.
get it.
yeah,
Yeah.
when I plug Hexfest, I can't tell you what he's going to teach yet. Let's see. I'd love to know next time you get here, Alan says. Denver. Or Colorado. Well, I guess here would be Colorado, yeah.
Well, Alan, we can definitely do that. I have to. I'm not going to Denver this year, but I will probably be there next year. And usually whenever I'm in Denver, it's usually either October or November that I'm teaching out there. But I have to talk to the people that bring me there and see when they want me to come. So I'll be out there. Am I gonna? Are you coming to Hexfest this year or this coming year? Because I'm coming back, and so they all know to pucker their assholes whenever I'm coming.
Yeah, he's not on the schedule yet.
Yeah.
I think Christian is like.
But we happen to
some stuff
know
out, but he'll
that
be
Hoodoo
there.
Sen Moise is teaching at Hexfest this year. He says, I'll be there. All right, we'll see you again,
Yeah.
Alan. Well, speaking of all that, we got to pay a bill here. Have to do my...
What bill?
Well...
Oh, yeah, that bill.
You know, there's certain things when you sign on to stuff, you're required to share those on your social media page. So we go beyond, above and beyond when we do it on our podcast, because WitchCon's coming up. That'll be the next thing coming up. Bring the magic to you. February 18th to the 20th, 2022. Join the largest online magical conference in the world, featuring over 100 witches and conjurers coming to you by live stream video from across the globe. Watch classes live and then watch on demand whenever you want. We still haven't watched all of the classes from last year's or even last year's, Hexfest 2 years ago, but they're still out there. February 18th to the 20th, 2022, Brian Kane and Christian Day and the Hex Education Network present WitchCon Online, featuring over 100 classes by over 100 witches and conjurers from across the globe, ready to share their time-honored wisdom and witchery with beginners and advanced practitioners alike. WitchCon Online presenters are the preeminent masters of the magical arts and hail from across a rainbow spectrum of occult and spiritual practices. And, I can't help but notice that they just kind of like copy and pasted those lines from Hexfest, but more power to them. Registration is limited to 1,000 attendees and includes all live video classes, rituals, and performances, as well as access to recordings of every class after the event has ended on our on-demand library, so you won't miss a single magical moment. Attendees and fans will love the live shopping in our virtual vendorium, featuring powerful ritual tools, signed books, exquisite jewelry, and handmade spellcrafts. Again, copy and pasted from Hexa. Our virtual meet and greet lets attendees and fans alike meet and chat with presenters live on Zoom, and it's a great way to meet and know your favorite teachers. We did a lot of that. Thank you. Last year, the live meet and greet, and we'll probably do a lot of that this year. WitchCon Online is live streamed on the Hex Education Network on Crowdcast, a web-based platform with no need to download the app. And I'm not going to read you the huge list of presenters because it takes too fucking long and I run out of breath. Get over to witchcon.com. Time's running out. 1,000 attendees, man. It's going to fucking sell out, just like Hexfest. And after we're past this, then I'll be plugging Hexfest next year. WitchCon Online. Bring the magic to you. Then I got one other, cauldronfest.com. Cauldron Fest 2022. Fall Creek... Falls, Piney Creek Camp in Spencer, Tennessee. April 21st through the 24th. I'm going to be there. Come join Friends of Cauldron Fest as we celebrate our first Cauldron Fest. Come and join us in the Golden Peak of Cumberland Plateau at Fall Creek Fall State Park. Our event will host many workshops, vendors, great food, entertainment, and a kickoff party Friday evening. Wake up every morning with the chance to see the deer enjoying their morning breakfast. As you dine in the dining hall. Hey, shut the fuck up. As you dine in the dining hall, this 3-night, 2.5-day event will be a great escape for everyone who needs after a trying few years. Register today as space is limited. And again, there's a bunch of presenters. I know I'm going to be there. I know I'm going to meet Hoodoo Brujo for the first fucking time. I know him off of TikTok. And it's the first time. So this is one of the times when I waived my travel expenses. I'm going to get my ass to Tennessee some fucking how. We're going to like drive through fucking Mississippi and all these red states that I'm scared of somehow to get to fucking Spencer, Tennessee. To do this thing. And you can go to cauldronfest.com and see what I'm teaching, because I don't even remember what I said I was going to be teaching there. But it's going to be great. You're going to love it, and I'll rock it. Everybody's going to rock it. Matter of fact, the Spirit Witch, one of my students, is going to be there. Of course, you've got to mention her. And it's going to be really cool. And you go to cauldronfest.com. You can see the list of presenters and all of the stuff happening there. It sounds pretty cool. Like all the food's included. Everybody gets like a cabin. It's like we're out in the woods, but we're all getting cabins and shit. Hopefully it goes well. It's going to be the first time these people pull this thing off. And it's sounds like a large endeavor. So come see me and others at cauldronfest.com, April 21st through the 24th, 2022. All right. And back to... Oh, there's the chat room. Let's see what they're saying. Oh, I'm not going to repeat what Alan Jackson just said there, because it's not quite legal in this state. But cool! Good. It'd be great to see you again, Alan. I still remember you from last year. Sitting here with Hoodoo Sen Moise. We've gone into overtime on the Widdershins program. But, you know, I pay for 3-hour-long broadcasts, unlimited times per day. So we did it one time. We went 20 hours on Widdershins. We just had to reboot every 3 fucking hours just to see if we could do it. So we're finally getting our money's worth, sitting there talking to one of our favorite guests, Hoodoo Sen Moise. And I recall when we first had him on the show, it was like, I don't think me and Marta talked at all. We just listened to him talk, because he's such an entertaining guest. And now we know him. We didn't even fucking know him. He was just some dude out there that we were interviewing.
That's me.
He was the one person that would come on the air and talk about gay poleros, because it was such a controversial thing to talk about.
Indeed.
Now look at us.
And now he's become a good friend of ours.
Mm-hmm. We often will see him at the Golden Lantern doing readings at the bar, and I find that intriguing. I need to schedule some of my readings for when I'm at the Golden Lantern. Just do it at the bar.
That's right. Yes, you do.
All right. Well, I'm out of questions. What else you got to say?
I think I'm good.
We're
good.
we're like a half hour past.
I know.
time, too.
Well, I was just saying, you know, we're finally getting our money's worth from our large package. Because we haven't said that in a while, but we got a large package here at Spreaker.com. We can go on the air 3 hours per day, unlimited times per day.
We actually tried that.
And we did that. Marta was out of the room. We did that for like 20 hours one day. We just, every 3 hours, we start a new fucking episode, and we can do it. I don't think I could ever get that kind of deal at Blog Talk. We are kind of looking at Blog Talk, looking at some other formats, looking at, you know, some formats where maybe we can schedule the show ahead of time, which would be fucking great. I don't think Spreaker has that, but I need to like sift through all of the shit that's available on Spreaker and see if they have that. But if Blog Talk doesn't have a mobile application, that just won't work. Because like right here, it's me, Marta, Moise, and the dogs, of course, you fucking heard, sitting around the table with my phone on the table. We're doing it all off of my goddamn phone. Sound quality's good. Everything's good. If Blog Talk doesn't offer a mobile option, I can't go with that, because it's so much easier than setting up the laptop and the microphones and the monitor and all that shit. And then, you know, if there was too much noise out in the backyard, like, you know, the neighbor earlier raking her aluminum cans, if that had gotten to be too much, we could have just gone into the house. We couldn't do that with the full setup. So you can find us at Spreaker.com/user/Widdershins. And almost all the places that you get podcasts. If you don't find our podcast, then go somewhere else. But we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, SoundCloud, and 5 or 6 other places that I can't even fucking remember. You can find Widdershins everywhere.
Yes.
Hoodoo Sen Moise has run out of things to say. And we've run out of questions for Hoodoo Sen Moise. I mean, you got to give us credit. We talk to him every couple days, and we usually talk about the same kind of shit. So I'm amazed that we had so many questions that we hadn't already asked. I mean, I asked some of the questions that I've already asked, just for your benefit, because that's what radio hosts do and shit. But it's been quite a fucking episode, as usual.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you for coming, man.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure.
All right. Anything else to plug?
No.
HoodooSenMoise.com. All right, we'll play you a couple and get the fuck out of here. Widdershins. This.
Expressions on the faces of the starting millions. The power of the plan, the fuel that drives the clan. He's the motive and the conscience of the murderer. He's a preacher on TV, the false sincerity, the formula that's written by the big computers and nuclear bombs. The kids with no moms, and I'm fearful that he's inside me. Yeah, we've got the American Jesus. See him on the interstate. We've got the American Jesus, exercising his authority. We've got the American Jesus, bolstering national faith. We've got the American Jesus, overwhelming millions every day. Yeah.
I'm as cranky as a bitch. All I wanna do is spit. Nothing to eat after that feast. We're getting laid regular at least. And I don't wanna hurt you, so stay out of my way. sucking too much of your seed. A man gotta flush themselves out too. But it's always sexual when they do. You women, you just stick some pad inside. Men gotta practically fall in fucking love. Beautiful trees. Beautiful trees. Beautiful trees. Beautiful trees. As I've been around the bush, that's bad luck. I asked you in cause I wanna fuck. I asked you out cause I was hungry. And now I'm basically just tired. You don't have to leave. You can stay here. After all, this is still a love song. Beautiful trees. Beautiful trees. Beautiful trees. Beautiful trees.
The little hand is on the two. The big hand is pointing at you. Now, what time is that? My clock glows in the dark. What does yours do? My kitchen counter is flat and has canisters on it. Does yours? Oh, I hope so. Don't you see these marbles in my hand? I want to go down to the store. I want to go where God knows best. I want to go to Sunday school. Jesus loves me, yes I know. I mean it. The little hand is on the two. The big hand is pointing at you. Now, what time is that? You tell me. Sometimes I like to wind up my clock so the hands will point in different special ways.